Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 73 of the Sports Consiglieres Podcast. My name is Jim Whalen. Along with me is my friend, my buddy, my pal, my consigliere, the voice of Woodridge football, the fearless mentor of the girls soccer team up at Woodridge.
Ooh, what a title. What a title.
And are you still the president of the Daniel Jones fan New Jersey chapter? Is that still in existence, or?
No, I resigned. I am now the president of the Jaxson Dart North Jersey chapter.
Okay, so Jerry Callow. Jerry, welcome to the show. Episode 73. We could either go past or present. Past, I pulled the name out of a hat, John Washington.
Beautiful. I'm very proud of you for that.
Yeah. So 86 to 92, we had 2 Super Bowl rings. Big goal line stand back in 1990 against the Bears at home.
Bears, correct. Brad Muster.
How was that?
Against Brad Muster.
Brad Muster, yeah. Good call. Good call. You're better than Wikipedia.
Listen, that's why I'm paid top dollar here.
That's right. So it wasn't clean. It wasn't easy, but it was a win. They won all 3 facets of the game. So do you want to go with the good or the bad starting off? We got a lot of good news and, of course, the bad news.
Yeah, I mean,
the Giants.
It's typical Giants. You're 0-3. An undefeated team comes in. You start your future today. Dart becomes the second quarterback in NFL history, along with Phil Simms, to make their first start against a unbeaten team. And he's gritty, he's tough. It was a good win. But even in Giant land, can you really enjoy it? Because obviously Naybers is out for the year. A crushing blow, non-contact injury. Add that to the list of of people in with the turf monster at MetLife that have gotten turf monsters. So, again, as far as the game goes, I thought we saw a lot out of Dart. You got moxie, you got toughness, you got a lot of personality. Scatterboo, I mean, that's a great story. Theo Johnson, made some big plays. And, I guess going forward, my man Darius Slayton is going to become a bigger part of the offense. I guess, you'll have Jalen Hyatt, getting in here, I would think. But as far as the game goes, we saw a lot of positives. The Chargers are coming in, undefeated, and it's a really, really good win. I wasn't expecting Dart, to light it up in game 1. It's going to be a process of, getting him, I guess, more confident or comfortable in the offense. Again, they use Singletary. The thing that really I didn't like was that, Dart was sacked 6 times. John Michael Schmitz had a bad penalty. But, to keep it positive on Victory Monday, as they say, because this is the first Victory Monday all year, we saw a lot, from him. And the place was buzzing, which you haven't seen in a very, very long time. And, the next week is very winnable. The Giants typically don't play well in New Orleans, but it is a winnable game, and then you have, you got the Eagles for 2 out of the 3 weeks after that. So I thought, I give Dart an A+ for all the intangibles he brought in. The play calling was better. I think what we're headed to now is Kafka, I think, really needs to improve the percentage. And this is not secret science here in the red zone, because ultimately, that's something that could cost him his position, because, man, they are just brutal in the red zone. And I know same thing happened yesterday. You had a penalty on first down, but you just got to be better in the red zone.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it.
Yeah, listening to a lot of the broadcasts today, I mean, that's one area that there was definitely a level of concern. But Dart said after the game, big confidence booster. It wasn't easy, wasn't clean. Had to fight, had to finish. So I think, and also gave Russ Wilson a shot out. Russ made an appearance when he was in the concussion protocol, but the first time they had an opening drive to start the game since November 13th of 2022. And they had 3 scores on their first 5 drives, which was nice to see.
Yep.
And then that first drive, I mean, that place was buzzing. It's been a long time since MetLife's been like that. Excited. They gave what the fans wanted. They were 0-3. They needed a change. I think I agree with a lot what you're saying. They kept the game in front of them. They didn't turn the ball over.
And had 2 turnovers.
Yeah, and the defense had 2 turnovers. I thought the defense played well. I called out Dexter Lawrence in the previous episode. He had an interception, almost ran it in, and also had a big stop. Spider-Man Burns, he had 2 sacks. He's got 5. He had a sack. He has 5 for the year. So, he's playing well. Kayvon Thibodeau, he's also playing well. I think they had like 27 pressures, 20 hits, and 2 sacks. So, and I think getting back to Dart, I think he was the first rookie since Tim Tebow who had a passing touchdown, a running touchdown, and 50 yards on the ground. And then, the pass to Wan'Dale Robinson, the drop. I mean, the defensive player made a good play, and I think also just early on in the game when he called back Slayton on that one pass.
Correct. Deep in his own territory too, Jim.
Yeah, so I think that shows his confidence, and him and Abdul Carter seem like they have a special relationship. I don't know if you're a numerologist or whatever else. I know they're both Star Wars fans. Your friend Art Stapleton always alluded to Star Wars about, the 6, the mission 6-6. I mean, Dart's 6 and Abdul Carter's 5-1. That's 6. So he said, be ready for the moment. Be ready for the moment. So basically, the Jaxson Dart is be ready for the moment. So the fake pitch to Scatabo, and then they had Theo Johnson. It's good to see the tight ends getting involved. I thought that was part of the offense that wasn't it was underutilized. Johnson, had a touchdown score, and also the third down conversion going to Johnson too. That was big to extend the game, and they burned their last time out. That kind of put the game at bay. So Scatabo had a nice game. You alluded to Singletary. Scatabo had, he was the bell cow for the game, 25 carries, 75 yards. And definitely seems like he's a personality fit for New York. And I can only imagine that locker room. And then Devin Singletary too. He also had, you alluded to earlier, he had 7 carries for 29 yards.
Yeah, he had a nice game.
Yeah, so Andrew Thomas played the full game. I think Jermaine Luminor on the right side, he's been consistent. So it's been good. John Michael Smits, I know you called him out last week, but he had the penalty on the dart run. But the Naybers ACL hurts because I think that everybody wanted to see that that combination with Dart and Naybers. And we alluded to in previous shows, he had how many catches last year? 109 receptions, 4 different receivers. So it was we'll see what happens there. But and then there was also talk about some OBJ talk. Does he come back to the Giants? So what do you think about that talk coming in?
That doesn't happen at all.
You don't think so? Do you think
think so? No, I think what's going to happen is they don't need that. I mean, that's just, to me, that's just like internet fodder. I'm curious to see how I think obviously, Slayton kind of moves up in the pecking order, but I think, listen, we've been hearing, about Jalen Hyatt, and he's done some things, at some point we need to see this kid, and I think it's going to happen. And I think to go along with what you said is, I think now going forward, you will see way more usage of the tight ends. And, I know that started yesterday, and, I think Theo Johnson is the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's got a little bit of an edge to him too. So which is good. So on the opposite side, I think they on the defensive side, they had 27 quarterback pressures. I think they had 20 from the edge. So Thibodeau and Burns had a nice game. I think they had 12 hits and 2 sacks. What do you think about Thibodeau? Do you think that the conversation should start about re-signing him? You think that, listen, he's one of ours. He was drafted here. He's a giant. His contract season's up, so he's up this season. So what do you think about Thibodeau and contract talks?
I think he's playing well, especially lately. I think it's a little too early for that. But, again, listen, it was nice to see him. It was nice to see, I thought overall the defense played a good game. And it was nice
Yeah,
to see that, I mean, one guy I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention, because we kind of beat him up a little bit last week, was Drew Phillips. He
yep,
had the interception, and I thought overall he had a very nice game.
he did. So it's one of those things. Are we seeing Drew Phillips because he's drawing a tough assignment, and he has that? But he also had the interception, and on the other side, on the Chargers side, Ladd McConkey had 3 drops. So that was bad. So it was either frustration or whatever else. But there was some talk about a West Coast team coming East Coast, playing a 1 o'clock game. I don't think that really factors in because the same can be said, from an East Coast team going West Coast. But that one running back they have, the Chargers. He got picked before Dart. He looked like the real deal. He was tough to corral.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think though overall the Giant defense did perform. Talk about being on the hot seat. Shane Bone was on the hot seat all week. What do we expect? And overall, I thought he called a pretty good game. I was happy with the defense's performance. And again, going back to the Malik Naybers injury, listen, let's call this what it is. The Giants won one game. They're not going out looking to sign anybody, quote unquote, a big time name. It's just not going to happen. It's not happening. They're not in that position. And, it seems like these last few years, everybody wants Beckham to come back. It's not happening.
Yeah. Oh, he was at the game last Sunday, so I guess he was in
Yeah.
fanatics. So another name that resurfaced who has ties with both Babel and Joe Shane is Gabe Davis. I think he's on the practice squad for both.
Yeah. I don't
Oh,
listen. I don't rule them up trying to upgrade the position, but we're not going to see anything wow. They're not doing anything wow.
yeah.
Well,
Listen, I think you go with what you have. I think
yeah.
that, like you said, Slayton's been there 7 years. Wandale Robinson he's proven himself. Let's see what Hyatt has. And then you also have Bo Collins, the rookie out of Notre Dame. So, they're starting to work him in there. And I think you'll see more of the defense and also just on the Chargers. A lot. Herbert, I like his game. He's having an MVP, setting himself up for an MVP season so far. But the offensive line, Mekhi Becton, the former Jet, he was injured. He was also in Philly, last year, and also Joe Wall get hurt. But that's part of the game. So that's part of the
without
game
question
for injuries.
Yeah, listen. To be fair, their offensive line was pretty decimated.
Yeah. Well,
that started in the summer.
Yeah, and the Giants took advantage of it. So,
yeah.
Did you hear any comments about Russell Wilson and the Hall of Fame, especially from his former teammate Richard Sherman? Did you hear any?
I did see something. I did see something that they're saying that his last few years have taken him out of the Hall of Fame. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think he gets in. He won a Super Bowl. Over what? Over 10 Pro Bowls. Go ahead.
He went to 2. So he went to 2.
He went to 2, right? And really should have won both of those, but that's a whole nother. That we could do a show just on that whole drive. But or the way the drive ended. But I don't think, listen, I don't know what, the expectation is. I mean, I think, let's keep this in mind, right? I think you and I thought Russell was going to do a little bit better these few weeks. However, right, I think we both realized that we're not getting the Russell Wilson from the Seahawks. That's number one. Number two, Russell Wilson wasn't even the first choice. Technically, he wound up being the third choice. It was Matthew Stafford and then Aaron Rodgers. So I think the Giants knew what they were getting. The Giants, I think, were hoping for a few more weeks. I mean, I don't think realistically they thought that, that Dart was going to go the whole season without playing. I don't think anybody could have predicted it would have been this soon. But, it is what it is. What Russell Wilson has accomplished in his career, he has accomplished. I mean, Johnny Unitas in a Chargers uniform, Joe Namath in a Rams uniform, Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform. Brett Favre, that's a hard one because he kind of did rebound after the Jets saga with the Vikings. He got them almost to a Super Bowl. But, there's been numerous players that maybe their careers have gone on, longer than they should have. And, listen, when you think of Russell Wilson, this is what I think. A guy that could throw the ball down the field deep, that had a great career as a Seattle Seahawk, went to Denver. It didn't work out. Had a somewhat decent year where he still got the Steelers to the playoffs, and now you have his current year. I don't think you can make the argument that the guy took himself out of the Hall of Fame. I think, you saw Russell Wilson yesterday. I think Russell Wilson is the type of player that is very well liked, which is ultimately going to help him get into the Hall of Fame. He's probably going to get into politics or the media because, again, you saw him yesterday. He's running up and down. He's being that good teammate. He's being a good leader. Russell Wilson is not a malcontent. He's not about to become a malcontent. He's very image conscious. And, I think when you look back on his career, you look back on the Seattle days. That is it. That is it. I mean, we could sit here and name, Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer that maybe, spent too many years. I mean, Joe Montana had some success with the Chiefs. His career was judged what he did with the 49ers. I mean, we could go, and then you look at reverse, right? Look at his replacement in reverse. Steve Young started as a Buccaneer. Steve Young didn't become Steve Young until he went to the Niners.
Or Emmitt Smith going to the Cardinals.
So, Arizona. Tony Dorsett as a Bronco.
Yeah. I mean, I forgot about that one. But
there's a lot. And not even Hall of Fame. We don't even have to talk about Hall of Fames. I mean, Hall of Famers, you're judging a guy's career. When you think of, I'll use Tony Dorsett, for example. You look at him, he was probably one of the most popular players in the latter part of the 1970s and the 80s, as was the Cowboys, because they won. They were on national TV all the time. And nobody looks really back and says, oh, Tony Dorsett, I can't believe, he was awful with the Broncos. It happens. So to answer your question, no, I don't think it hurts his Hall of Fame chances. I know a lot of people maybe don't think he's a first ballot. I think he gets in. He has the Super Bowl win, and he had a really good career in Seattle, point blank.
Well, I guess he was 250 yards away from passing Fran Tarkenton for 13th on the all-time list. So I mean that's something impressive in itself. But there's also the talk about Eli making the Hall of Fame. He's got the 2 Super Bowls, but I guess he's 115 and 115. If my memory serves me right. So
yeah, but here's the thing with that though, the Hall of Fame, and I know we're getting away from the giant win here, but the Hall of Fame, people don't. This is what makes the Hall of Fame, I guess, so interesting. There is certain guys. It's really a subjective process. The process sometimes gets a little screwy. You make the argument about Eli Manning's record, right? But yet Joe Namath got in the Hall of Fame with throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, and he won one Super Bowl. And you could make an argument that the Jets with him kind of underachieved because they had some bad playoff losses where they should have went to another one. So, Warren Moon is in the Hall of Fame. He won 0 Super Bowls. He
Well,
was
I guess
successful.
one thing about Canton and Cooperstown is that the entry into the Hall of Fame is different. Cooperstown, I think a lot of the purists like the fact that there's a process there. You get voted in. I mean, you get voted in Canton, but it seems like the requirements to get into Canton are a lot different than in Cooperstown.
No question about that. No question. But
No.
do I think Eli gets in? Absolutely. He won
Well,
2 Super Bowls against probably the greatest quarterback of all time and the greatest head coach of all time. And ultimately, he performed very, very well in both Super Bowls. And he also performed very, very well in the playoff run for both Super Bowls.
Well, the only thing I also say is just stability. He was always in the lineup until
Correct.
until the Giant coach took him out.
Ben McAdoo. His toughness is very underrated.
So
very underrated how tough he is.
So I mean, I just did some research this week about some rookie quarterbacks. Of course, you alluded to Phil Simms. I think they were winless, and he ended up getting a start back in '79. So George Young actually drafted him. So I think he was 6-4, and I think he had 13 TDs and 14 interceptions. So, but went on to be an MVP. Kent Graham was another one. Interesting name. I think he was done by necessity. I guess he was drafted in the 8th round. I mean, but he went 0-3. And of course, we just spent time on Eli Manning and Daniel Jones. In 19, I guess he replaced the great Eli Manning. So I think he went 3-9. Tommy DeVito was another one. I think he won his first 3 games.
Yeah.
23. And of course, Jaxson Dart. And then if you had to go back. You go back to 43 against Charlie Connolly. Charlie Connolly fought in World War II, but he was an older rookie. But I think back in 1948, he started as a rookie. But it just shows like the evolution of the game and how, you look at, Simms to Graham, 79 and 92, Graham to Eli, 92 to 04, and then Eli to Jones, 19, 23, and 25. So, the game is always they're saying a lot of these quarterbacks are coming out of school ready for the pro game, where that wasn't the case years ago. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the college offenses are obviously more pro ready. You look at Phil Simms, it was interesting, right? And obviously everyone that knows me knows that's my favorite football player of all time, probably my all-time favorite athlete. So when Phil Simms was coming out of Morehead State, Morehead State wasn't, known for, slinging the ball down the field. Bill Walsh actually gave Phil Simms a lot of attention through scouting, and Phil Simms kind of had a thought, if you will. There was a thought that the 49ers were going to grab Simms back then.
Yeah, because Walsh was on the Giants staff before he got the San Francisco job.
So I mean, the thing is this: you never know what's going to happen back then, because I think guys were more. Listen, drafting a quarterback, there's no exact science. You look at a guy like Johnny Manziel. I mean, we could name. There's stories upon stories, but
yeah.
Phil Simms is a great story. I mean, he kind of stabilized the Giant offense. And the other thing is, he wasn't known. Morehead State wasn't even, when he got drafted, Morehead State wasn't even in the position to have a press conference. That's how crazy, that time was. Nowadays, you look at a guy like Jaxson Dart, he's coming out of Ole Miss, playing for Lane Kiffin. He's as pro ready, as they come.
Yeah.
So, the other thing is, like anything else, the game has evolved. You could say that about every sport. And these guys, you have a situation where you have a guy like Jordan Love. He sat for a while. Who knows what would have happened if he would have played right away. But back in the day, nobody really started, right away. I mean, even John Elway. I mean, Elway came in, he had Steve DeBerg. Ironically, when Montana came in, Steve DeBerg was also the quarterback on the 49ers. So, the whole quarterback thing, there's no exact science. As Ernie Accorsi used to say, you go with your gut, you go with your conviction, you think you have your guy, and you go with it. And, that's what ultimately Brian Dable did. And, now there's really no turning back.
Yeah, well, I don't think so. I think, the fans wanted it. I think that, I don't know what the conversations were behind closed doors, but, I think basically it was self-preservation. They were talking about Dable's job. So, I mean, that quieted it a little bit. I don't know. It's a long season. They're 4 games into it, but I like what I see. But what's your analysis on Dart overall on the game? Because I mean, having that first drive, I mean, I haven't felt that energized in a Giant game in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely A+ on moxie, A+ on leadership. From all accounts of the players, A+ on player relations. Developing relationships with his teammates. And I think they'll, on a week-to-week basis, they'll start to open up the playbook for him. But like game 1 in the books, Jimmy, so far so good. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think everybody likes what they see. But this week they go down to
Definitely needs to slide a little bit more, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. And what do you
That's
think
his
about?
personality too, though, coming out.
Yeah. Well, it seems like it. I mean that's what it seems like. He definitely and that one run that got called back on John Michael Schmitz. That was you saw his aggressiveness. So, but
yeah, that would have been another 36 yards.
Yeah. So getting back to play the Saints this week, I guess it's been the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. I like to delve into history of some of the Giants games, especially some of their NFC East rivals, outside NFC rivals. So, I think you obviously know this, but I mean, it was interesting. I think the Giants were 11-5 in that 05 season, and they actually got an extra home game because of Hurricane Katrina. The Saints.
They played the Saints. Yes, I was at that game.
You were at that game. That was September
Jim
19th.
was the coach of the Saints.
So that was technically a home game for
Correct.
Saints. I guess they end up moving to Austin, Texas, but until the Superdome obviously was being housed from everybody got displaced by the storm. But looking at the Giants season, they're 11-5. They got 9 home games that year. I mean, that was a tremendous advantage for the Giants. But you've been to the game. You remember anything about that game 20 years ago? And this is off script, everybody. We didn't script this.
Yeah, Jimmy loves doing this to me. So Jimmy, here I'm going to take a shot in the dark, and I know if I'm wrong on this, Monahan will crush me. So that game, I want to say, Willie Ponder ran back a kick. I might be wrong with the player, but I believe somebody on the Giants ran back a kick.
All right.
Returned the kick for a touchdown.
I got to look at my notes. Willie Ponder is definitely one of, but the quarterback Aaron Brooks, I think he threw for
Aaron Brooks, number 2.
Yeah, so I think he was on the Giants when they wasn't he a third quarterback on the roster when they made the Super Bowl?
No, that was Anthony Brooks.
Anthony Brooks. Okay.
Anthony Wright. Excuse me.
Anthony Wright. You're right. You're Anthony Wright. All right. So, through Tiki had listen, nobody expected the Saints to after what they had to go through and dealing with the community. Nobody expected it, but and it was tough, I guess, for Eli being a New Orleans native to kind of go down. Him and Peyton were down there and doing their part and part of the community. So I mean, it's been 20 years since that hurricane. So I thought it was just a nice tidbit.
Absolutely.
So we got to look up Willie.
And that's Ponder, tough. That's also, as you know, a very tough place historically for the Giants to play.
Yes, yes, and I think I think the Saints own the own the square. I think that's like 1715. I think I was doing my research. I think they own a field. Own so, but yeah, it was a tough for the Saints to come back. But I think it was a good 30 for 30. I guess that the one about the Fajita when they played their first home game and he blocked the punt. Now I guess he's got ALS. No, Fajita's helping him out, but I forget the player that blocked the punt when they had the home opener. For the Saints, that was a 30 for 30.
Interesting. I remember there besides Archie Manning, their big player in the early years was Danny Abramovich. Excuse me.
Okay, and then also I remember Bobby Hebert. I think that was a.
Well, that was much later. Yeah, Bobby Hebert
Yeah.
came from the CFL. That was much later in the latter part of the 80s, and he had some success there.
And Hookie Gajan, that was another one. That was another name. So, but what do you
love the history?
Yeah, well, and listen, I guess I like to live in the past, especially with this team. But I got to get that name. But there was a 30 for 30 before. It's gonna kill me. So I'm looking at the notes. OC, you're blocked a kick for the game you went to. Curtis Aloche returned for 22 yards for a touchdown. And then the Giants won.
Wow.
27-10. So, but
yeah, I think I think I'm wrong about he didn't Ponder. I actually had to look it up because I know Pat will kill me. I don't believe Willie Ponder did have a touchdown in that game. He had a touchdown in that season. For some reason, I thought he returned the kick. I got to get the whole box score.
All right. And then, I didn't mention your Red Bulls. It's still going to make the postseason.
So here we go real quick. Brandon Jacobs, Tiki Barber, and then Jay Feely had 2 field goals. So that was the scoring that game. 27-10, as you said, Giants. So on Saturday evening, my son and I exited, which is now Sports Illustrated Stadium, disappointed once again with the New York Red Bulls' performance at home. Environment was great, really good environment. It was T-shirt night. Only the Red Bulls decided to give have a good promo against a good rival. It's amazing. And then we're coming into the stadium, and there's one of the employees was like, "Yeah, just be advised, we're running low on shirts." So typical Red Bulls. So we get into our seats, sat in 107. A lot of excitement around us, close to the supporters. They do a phenomenal job. I mean, they had the place was rocking. Viking Army, Empire Supporters Club. They do a tremendous job. And 2 minutes in, New York City finds the back of the net, and the game was just it ended 3-2 New York City. It all pretty much, I think, makes the Red Bulls a very long shot to make the postseason. They have 2 games left, Cincinnati and Columbus. And the issue in the game was they just didn't defend very well. And there was a lot going on in the game. There was a lot of things they didn't do well. And then, unfortunately, at the end of the game, Raheem Edwards, who was their starting left back, there was an incident with him and some of the fans, which is now under investigation. It was a tough loss, but it was just a bad look. Again, there's all speculation on what was said to him. He was out after the game signing autographs. Somebody said something to him, and he got hot very, very quickly, which is what you don't want to see, which is a little disturbing because, it was a Red Bulls home game, obviously, and it just kind of, coming. Obviously, I left as soon as the final whistle was blown. So that's something I was not made aware of until I got back home. And it was just a bad ending. And it's always tough to lose to New York City. The Red Bulls are a flagship franchise, which means they've been here since '96. New York City is one of the newer kids of the league, and they already have an MLS Cup. So, we're constantly reminded of that. And, I'm gonna end the soccer chat with this. I refer to two ex-Red Bull legends, Sasha Kljestan, who played at Seton Hall, and Dax McCarty. And they said maybe what Red Bulls really need is not to make the postseason and just hit the reset button, because this roster is flawed in a lot of different places, and we'll kind of go from there. So to answer your question, do I think they make the postseason? It's going to be a long shot. They're basically battling with Chicago. They have 2 games left, and my expectations are very low. With that being said, the streak will end. It's an impressive streak. 15 consecutive years of making the postseason. And
Wow.
I think, and it's very impressive. As a matter of fact, I believe that's the record in North American sports. But now here's the thing, Jimmy. I think overall, not necessarily with the current regime, but in years past, that was kind of the target zone. Oh, we're going to make the playoffs. And that was good enough, if you will. This team is not the same team they were last year when they went on that wonderful run to the MLS Cup. It's far from that. There's a lot of holes, and I think they actually will not make the postseason. And I think maybe for once, maybe we're better off. Remember, a very big person in the Red Bull hierarchy, because, remember, it's just not the New York Red Bulls. There's multiple soccer teams, and basically their director of soccer to Americanize his role is Klopp, Jurgen Klopp. Liverpool and
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a big
so
name. Yeah.
maybe them not making the postseason is what they really need. And I think if they don't make the postseason, I think Sandro Schwartz is gone. Everybody loved him last year. He got us to MLS Cup, and and I think they will hit the reset button. Interestingly enough, before this last game, Klopp was actually at training during the week, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's a Liverpool coach. I mean, he knows he was he won the Premier League. So I mean, you're talking about, he's up there with coaching. So he knows talent too, and
Absolutely.
Coach Salah at Liverpool. So I mean that's a good name to have inside your building. So, and just turning to baseball, I know we're getting up against it, but just turning to baseball. What's your take on the Mets and that collapse? I mean, pitching overall. I mean, they put the money out for Soto. We figure that would have been that, but ultimately pitching was the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, correct. The pitching kind of fell apart. The fact that they were eligible going into the last game of the year was a miracle. It really was.
Yeah, and then of course the Yankees played tomorrow. They played the Sox. What's your take on the Yanks? Because some say that they're playing their best baseball right now.
They are.
And I
they
think
are. It'll be interesting. They're playing very good baseball. I think for them to come back and really end tied with Toronto, was an accomplishment in itself, even though Toronto has a tiebreaker. But, the Yankees still scare you. And if they don't, as a Yankee fan, if the Yankees don't scare you, then there's a problem.
Well, I mean, with Judge, I think it was I guess he's going to have a batting title and a home run title.
The batting title, correct.
And, well, I mean, batting title.
331, I believe.
And I guess I hit 50 home runs. I guess that's only been done 3 times. I think Jimmy Fox and Mickey Mantle were the other two. That's good company. And Stanton, I can't believe Stanton's got 450 home runs. He's closing in on 500. So
closing in on the major milestone, 500. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
very interesting.
That was that. Yeah, I wouldn't. I was surprised when he hit 450. I was really surprised to have that. But other than that, Jerry, I think this will put another. It's good to end a show on a Giants win. Hopefully, we have to repeat a week from now. But I'll let you take this one out. But let me just do my shtick, and then you can take it out. But this episode was produced by Dave Sturcio, Chop Sports Media. Look for us on social media, all things social media. Also, I've been putting out articles on Substack that kind of mirror the episodes that we have, just to kind of get some more views to the episode. But I'll pass it along to Jerry, and Jerry, take episode number 73 out. John Washington.
Like Jimmy said, this was episode 73 for our man John Washington, Super Bowl champion. Join us next week as we will recap, hopefully, Jaxson Dart's second victory. And we will probably also commiserate about the Red Bulls. Jimmy, great job. Everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks to our producer, Dave Sturcio, who has frozen my picture during this episode. He probably did that on purpose. But anyway, take care. Thanks for listening. We'll catch everyone soon. Have a great week. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Jerry.